Today I am very excited because we are talking about one of my favorite genres or mix of genres, sci-fi and fantasy. I have given so many sci-fi and fantasy books 5 stars over the years, but I have tried my best to narrow it down to my top 10. Just keeping it real, this could change tomorrow. A different day I could have a completely different top 10. Speculative fiction in general is, aside from horror, my favorite. So it was extremely hard to pick just 10. But I feel like this 10 kind of encompasses my reading tastes, things that I generally am drawn to, the weirdness, the different narratives that I tend to enjoy. I am super excited to talk about these books. They are not in any particular order. That would be way too hard, as I always say. But without further ado, let's get into the books. First, I want to talk about Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I also have The Glass Hotel and Station 11. Out of those 3, this is kind of by far my favorite, although I do enjoy her others as well. This book is extremely hard to pitch. It's very different and hard to explain, but I will try. The story starts in Canada, I believe. This young man, he is kind of exiled to this Canadian forest. The year is 1912. Sorry, I'm just looking through some of the details again. And basically he's in this forest and he hears this otherworldly sound of a violin that is being played in an airship terminal. I'm not gonna lie, the first portion of this book, first talking about this man, I didn't really know where the story was going. I was into it, but it was not as exciting as I was hoping for. I really thought it was going to be just more of like a slow moving, almost like boring story. But then we start getting some different perspectives and some different timelines. And even through most of the book, you are kind of unaware of how these people are connected or how these stories connect. They're all extremely different. But let me tell you, the payoff when it finally comes together is incredible. There are a couple recurring characters, I think, from The Glass Hotel and maybe Station 11 as well, but there are some, you don't need to read them necessarily to make that connection, but there are some kind of recurring characters throughout her books. There is also a storyline having to do with a pandemic, so that is one thing to be aware of if you are someone who doesn't really like reading about that. I can't really say much more. You just need to go into it and just let it take you. Just go along with the journey, and by the end everything will become clear. Next up, we have Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. This is a story about a woman, well, a robot, basically a sex doll. Her name is Annie, but she is a variation of this robot known as Estella. They're commercialized robot girlfriends, essentially. This one, Annie, she belongs to this man, Doug, and her existence really is about keeping him happy, being the perfect girlfriend to him, not really having any desires or needs or wants of her own, only being there to serve this man. As she continues to progress and grows into being more human-like, she starts to have more human thoughts, basically. And so as she starts to have more human thoughts, she starts to question her existence, and does she have her own desires? Does she have her own can she have her own autonomy? And it was just so interesting. I absolutely love books that deal with questions on autonomy and power and consent. And it was all of that, but it also had this very thrilling, like the pace of it to me was more like a thriller or a mystery, even though that isn't necessarily what it is. I absolutely loved Annie's perspective, felt for her, and viewed her as a human. It asks those deeper questions. What really is humanity? What really is autonomy? It's one of those books that is highly entertaining, but also makes you think deeply, which is, one of my favorite combinations. Switching over to fantasy, my favorite cozy fantasy series, and specifically this book, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This book is a cup of hot chocolate. This book is a warm hug. It just makes you feel comforted when you read it. We have this orc named Viv, and she has lived this life as like a warrior, like kind of an assassin, if I remember correctly. And she is ready to retire, basically. And so she goes to this small town. Based on some of her earlier travels, she has learned what coffee is. And so she goes to this town, and her main goal through the book is to set up this coffee shop. There is a plot, there are, things that she has to overcome, but it's very mundane things, like where is she going to get the equipment to build this certain thing, or where is she going to find someone to make her baked goods or whatever. And so of course she meets a lot of friends along the way. Thimble is this little ratkin who makes all of the pastries and everything. There are so many lovely descriptions of the coffee being made and the spices, and descriptions of the cinnamon rolls, and just all of these things that I personally find just very comforting to read. Someone who needs more action or more adventure plot may not like this as much, but if you just want something cozy, like genuinely cozy, I don't think really anybody does it better than Travis Baldree. I am going to be making a favorite series video that is just like all my favorite series, not genre based, but just in general. I could have saved this for that, but I just had to include this because this is, like I said, by far my favorite of the three. There's Bookshops and Bone Dust, which is kind of a prequel, and then Brigands and Bread Knives, which is the newest one, and that one is a sequel. You do not have to read it as a series. This is perfectly, I think, just as enjoyable as a standalone. But yeah, I mean, what more is there to say? It's literally just reading descriptions of coffee and lattes and cinnamon rolls and friends and found family. And yeah, if that sounds like something you would enjoy, this is really the best of the best. Next, we have I Keep My Exoskeletons to Myself by Marissa Crane. This one, it's kind of hard to explain as well. This is set in a society very similar to our own. However, instead of being incarcerated when you commit a crime, they have whoever is in charge have found a way to attach a shadow to the person. So it's very obvious who is a criminal because they have a shadow attached to their body. If there are multiple crimes, they can attach more than one shadow to your body. Our protagonist, Chris, she is a person who has one of these shadows. Her wife has given birth to this baby and dies during childbirth. So due to that, they have attached a shadow to this baby. Chris is grieving through the entire book for her wife. It's kind of written almost as a letter to the wife, kind of second person narrative. Chris does everything she can to basically get this shadow taken away from the child, because these people that have the shadows, they're called shadesters, and they are obviously treated very poorly in society and lose a lot of opportunities based on the fact that they have these shadows, and it's a way to abuse and disenfranchise people. There's public shame. There's, they're just treated poorly. That's really all the plot. The majority is just the random musings of Chris, her grief that is palpable on every single page, the way that she's writing to her dead wife, and it's just so obvious that she's struggling to move on, to make a life for this child that she's now responsible for, that she doesn't feel equipped for. It is a very heavy book, and just be aware that it is heavily focused on grief, but I just found it incredibly relatable, incredibly fascinating. I think this concept is one of the most interesting things that I've ever read. Another extremely difficult to explain book is Flux by Jinwoo Chong. I don't even think I can explain, so I'm just going to read you what it says. A blazing, original, and stylish debut novel about a young man whose reality unravels when he suspects his mysterious employers have inadvertently discovered time travel and are using it to cover up a string of violent crimes. 4 days before Christmas, 8-year-old Bo loses his mother in a tragic accident. 28-year-old Brandon loses his job after a hostile takeover of his big media employer, and 48-year-old Blue, a key witness in a criminal trial against an infamous now-defunct tech startup, struggles to reconnect with his family. So begins Jin-Woo Chang's dazzling time-bending debut that blends elements of neo-noir and speculative fiction as the lives of Bo, Brandon, and Blue slowly entwine to reveal a vast network of secrets and an experimental technology that threatens to upend life itself. Intertwined with them is the saga of an iconic 80s detective show, Raider, whose star actor has imploded spectacularly after revelations of long-term concealed abuse. Flux is a haunting and sometimes shocking exploration of the cyclical nature of grief, moving past trauma, and the pervasive nature of whiteness within the development of Asian identity in America. It reminded me a lot of Interior Chinatown, which I've spoken about before. In the beginning, there's three main protagonists, but I'd say the main protagonist, that's the 28-year-old Brandon. He's writing a letter to this guy from this iconic detective show, which is very pervasive through the entire thing. He writes letters to him. He talks to him as if he, knows him in real life. It's just very... I just remember it's been a while since I've read this, but I just remember laughing so many times. It did take me just a little bit to get into the writing style. It is extremely different. The way it's written is just very unique. It had some amazing twists. And yeah, if you're looking for something just completely different, completely wacky, something to make you think, but to also have fun with, this is one of my absolute favorites. One of my absolute favorite time travel stories of all time, also incredibly difficult to read. We have Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. We have Dana. She is a Black woman. She's 26. She lives in California. I think it's set in the 70s. 1976, I believe. Dana is just out of nowhere sent to the antebellum South. I can't remember exactly what year she goes back to, but she is essentially thrust back into the past. At this plantation, there are slaves. She's having to contend with this completely different time period. She can't make heads or tails of why she is being pulled to this time. As Dana, a 20th century Black woman, is celebrating her 26th birthday with her new husband when she's snatched from her home in California and transported to the antebellum South. Rufus, the white son of a plantation owner, is drowning, and Dana has been summoned to save him. Repeatedly drawn back through time, and with each day growing longer and more perilous, Dana is forced to contend with the brutal legacy of slavery and white supremacy, not knowing if her life will end long before it has a chance to begin. So yeah, she keeps being transported back and forth. There's no real rhyme or reason to when she gets to go back to her time versus when she's going to be pulled back to the past. She's just kind of coming and going into these extremely dangerous, hard situations. Obviously, in America, we still have a massive issue with racism and the things that Black people face on a daily basis. But to go from freedom from the 1970s to like a plantation with slaves is just a nightmare. So it was very, like, I was on the edge of my seat. Like, I was so scared for her this entire book. It also showed like how, you can get used to a situation no matter how hard it is, no matter how traumatizing it is. You can, humans are so good at adapting and so good at kind of accepting what happens to us. There were times in this book where Dana kind of just got used to life on the plantation, and it kind of just became the norm, and it was like a shock to go back to her own time. It's weird for me to say this is like my favorite time, or one of my favorite time travel books, when the time travel really isn't even the focal part of it. It's honestly more just about the story and the characters. Highly recommend this. Next up, I want to talk about Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemor. This premise is pretty simple. We have Una Lockhart. Yeah, it's 1982 New Year's Eve. Let's see, she has her whole life before her. I think she's 19. She's kind of trying to make a decision about what she wants to do with her life. And when she wakes up, does it say what year it is? So as the countdown of the new year begins, Una faints and awakens 32 years in the future in her 51-year-old body. Greeted by a friendly stranger in a beautiful house she's told is her own, Una learns that with each passing year she will leap to another age at random, and so begins Una Out of Order. So it's not so much time travel. It is time travel, but it's not so much like a linear thing. It's like every year is a different age. So once she's 50, what did it say she was, 51, then that doesn't mean she goes to 52. Like, she can jump back to 25, and then she can jump to 46, and she can just never live the same age over again. But each year is out of order. So obviously the title, Out of Order. She basically is trying to figure out how to navigate this new reality. Like I said, the premise is simple, but the actual intricacies of how it works are really complex. But it's mostly just following this woman as she tries to navigate living completely out of order with, you know, what she should be. I think that Una reacts in a similar way to how I would react, or you know, what I think is a way that would be perfectly reasonable or normal to react. A lot of books like this, I find people act in a way that is kind of unrealistic given the situation they now find themselves in. But with Una, I found her extremely relatable, extremely funny. She, you know, kind of tries to make the best of a very confusing situation. Just looking through it, like, yeah, I definitely need to do a reread of this. One of my favorite books of all time. The next one is Recursion by Blake Crouch. This one, I'm not sure what I will be spoiling by trying to explain. At first, it looks like a disease, an epidemic that spreads through no known means, driving its victims mad with memories of a life they never lived. But the force that's sweeping the world is no pathogen. It's just the first shockwave unleashed by a stunning discovery, and what's in jeopardy is not our minds, but the very fabric of time itself. In New York City, Detective Barry Sutton is closing in on the truth, and in a remote laboratory, neuroscientist Helena Smith is unaware that she alone holds the key to this mystery and the tools for fighting back. Together, Barry and Helena will have to confront their enemy before they and the world are trapped in a loop of ever-growing chaos. This is what hooked me. In the first chapter, we get, you know, Barry's point of view, and he is basically trying to save this woman who is about to jump off of a building. And this woman, Anne, she is struggling because she is having memories of this life that has apparently never actually existed. And so that's why, you know, they're saying they think it's like a memory disease. And so he, you know, Barry is trying to get her to see the beauty in this life, and, you know, maybe that life isn't real, but, you know, your real memories in your real life, you know, maybe that's worth living for. This book just never let up. It was just full speed from the beginning. All of his books feel like thrillers, but the speculative element, I think, really sets them apart. This book is not, description is good, but it's not what you think. It's not the way that it seems at first, is what I'll say. Yeah, I absolutely love this book. One of my favorites of all time. I feel like he keeps saying every book is one of my favorites. Like, duh, obviously. I know I said I couldn't put them in order. They're just the top 10. However, I will say these last two might be my favorite two books that I've ever read. Not genre specific, just in general. We have The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. How do I describe the feeling? You know, the movie Neverending Story? That's not really anything like this book, but I'm trying to explain the vibe, right? The Neverending Story, the movie, was one of my favorite movies as a kid. Bastian is at one point in, I think it's a school. It's been a long time since I've seen it. He's in a building somewhere. Anyway, he's trying to run away from some other kids or something. And he goes into this little room. It's like storming outside, and he pulls the blanket over his head, and he's just like, you know, starts reading The Neverending Story, right? That scene in that movie as a kid is what made me, like, I've sought out that feeling ever since I saw that movie. I sought out that cozy feeling of, it's not normal coziness. It's like coziness with like almost a thrilling aspect. I'm not explaining it very well, It's like he's cozy because he's got his blanket and he's reading, right? Which is like where I want to be at all times. But it's thrilling because he's like kind of, you know, scared. Like he's just come from something scary and it's like storming. You know, this book gave me that feeling that I've been seeking since I was a child. I feel like this book was written for me specifically. It's like Gareth Brown was like, hey, Laura, nice to meet you. Here is a book that I wrote for you and nobody else. Just kidding. A lot of people love this book, but I do feel like this book speaks to me. What is it about? I'll tell you. About this girl, Cassie. First of all, look at this. So gorgeous. Cassie, she works at this bookstore and she's closing up one night and this man comes in, and I say this man, he's like one of her favorite regulars, and he dies sitting there as she's closing up, but he has left her a book. This book, she soon discovers, is basically a doorway into other realities, other times, other places. There are people hunting for this book. There are people trying to hunt her down. There are people trying to help her. There are people with, you know, obviously very interested in this book. That's basically it. She spends the whole time trying to kind of figure out what is the deal with this book. Why do people want it? I mean, obviously she knows why it's special because it has like magical powers, but you know, she's just trying to get more information so that she can keep it out of the hands of the wrong people. It says, now Cassie is being hunted by the few people who know about the special books. With just her roommate, Izzy, to confide in, she has to decide if she will help the mysterious and haunted Drummond. This is a guy who approaches her pretty shortly after she finds the book. Haunted Drummond protect the Book of Doors and the other books in his secret library's care from those who would do evil. Only Drummond knows where the library is, and only Cassie's book can get them there. But some are willing to kill to obtain those secrets, and a dark force in the form of a shadowy, sadistic woman is at the very top of that list. Yeah, so as I was saying, extremely cozy, also horrific. There were like, one scene would be just absolute comfort, you know, like coziness. And then the next scene would be just something from a horror book. And then the next scene, we're on a thrilling chase, you know, and so it's really hard to pin down exactly. I mean, obviously it's fantasy sci-fi, but it's hard to pin down exactly like where this book fits in those genres. But it is absolutely one of the best times I've ever had reading. And I still think about this book almost on a daily basis. And finally, we have Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This might be my favorite book of all time. It could be my favorite book. This book is like an Escher painting. It just heightens all of your senses. It's like listening to a seashell. It's like a dream-like sequence. You can hear the waves when you read this book. You can smell like salty air. I've never read a book that has enhanced my senses more. Piranesi is this man, and he lives in this house. There are some rooms that have the ocean in them. It's a huge labyrinth, right? He just wanders these halls. It's very liminal space, you know, it's very like the back rooms. Piranesi's house is no ordinary building. The rooms are infinite, its corridors endless, its walls are lined with thousands upon thousands of statues, each one different from all the others. Within the labyrinth of halls, an ocean is imprisoned. Waves thunder up staircases. Rooms are flooded in an instant. But Piranesi is not afraid. He understands the tides as he understands the pattern of the labyrinth itself. He lives to explore the house. There is one other person in the house, a man called the Other, who visits Piranesi twice a week and asks for help with research into a great and secret knowledge. But as Piranesi explores, evidence emerges of another person, and a terrible truth begins to unravel, revealing a world beyond the one Piranesi has always known. I'd say almost from page one, there is a feeling of dread. Almost a claustrophobic feeling, which is so interesting because it's describing the infinite space of the house, right? But like the more the space is described, the more closed in you start to feel, and you know something is not quite right with this situation. I mean, that's really all you need to know going in. I don't know what it is about this book. This book is just an experience. It's reading this book is an experience. I also love that this book can be interpreted in so many different ways. It's not necessarily one right answer. It's how you take it, what you think it means. I have my own opinions on what I think about it. Somebody else may think the complete opposite, or something completely different. I am still hunting for a book that will give me the same feeling that this book gave me. So if you have any suggestions, let me know. And that is gonna do it for my favorite sci-fi fantasy books. Like I said, I have so many more that I could be talking about, so many that I've loved. I just love sci-fi and fantasy in general. I'm always looking for recommendations for books that mess with my mind, books that make me think differently, books with different, realities, and really just, I love to escape in a book. So anything that takes me to another planet or another dimension or another time, those are always going to be my go-to books. That is all from me today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.